in this box is one of the contenders for one of the best lenses of the year. First impressions when you get this out of the box, the case, the pouch, it's like, it's really good quality. Even the zips, I mean, everything kind of screams quality. The whole thing is, you're kind of off to a really good start with this Sirui 85mm lens. If we look at the lens itself here, we have our autofocus manual focus switch. And this is what I'm going to get really excited about, because everything screams quality. Even the click on the switches screams quality on this Sirui 85 1.4 lens. It's metal for a start, and really solid, but it's 540 grams, which is incredibly light for a lens that's an 85mm lens. Now, a lot of folks are going to hold this up to the Sony 85mm G Master lens, and I'm going to compare those in a bit, so stick around for that. And there's differences. Not what you might think though. If we go to the other side of the lens, we have another click. Click, click button, so you can have the click on and off for the aperture. So this is it off, but listen to this. Very silent, but it's that click when you bring it back. It just sounds expensive, right? I know that's a really small, weird thing, but that's the kind of level you're dealing with. As I said, I sound like a lunatic, but it just feels really, really premium. And for the price point, you would not expect this level of design and engineering and manufacturing. It's just so solid. Anyway, that's the actual kind of the lens itself. If you take off the lens cap at the back, you have a USB-C port. So at some point you might be able to update the firmware. Putting this back on because I didn't want to destroy the lens. Here's the actual piece of glass itself. It's just beautiful. I mean, look at it. It's just freaking beautiful. Before I talk about the Sony G Master 85, which a lot of people will compare to this, let's take a quick look at the autofocus, because autofocus is on the box here. There is one big problem with the autofocus in this Sirui 85mm lens, and that is it performs like a Sony lens, not a third-party lens. Let me explain. Generally, native lenses like a Sony lens will perform a lot better with the camera, that same manufacturer. So Sony lens, Sony camera performs flawlessly because it talks to the camera better and it knows all the Sony secrets. But then something like this, the Sirui lens attaches on and it behaves like a Sony lens. Yep. The autofocus in this, right? And if there's ever something going to fall apart on a camera and a lens from another manufacturer outside of the camera manufacturer, it's going to be the autofocus. Sony's ZV-E1 has really good autofocus, but depending on the lens you can put onto it, it sometimes can fall apart. Not necessarily the case in this. Here I am walking around, and as you can see, this thing just locked on, and boom. There's no breathing, there is no jutting in and out, it's just locked on and works. Even in the studio here, if you look at the LCD screen on the Sony ZV-E1, zero. It's just locked on. You can see the eye tracking, the head tracking. It doesn't lose it whatsoever. Sometimes with lenses that are not native to the camera, this is where they start breathing and kind of focus hunting, and it looks awful. This, as I said, it just behaves like a native lens. I really, really tried hard to screw this over with the focus and zip. That's a major win for this lens. Let's take a look at some of the video here as well. The video just works. I think it's absolutely amazing. While an 85mm lens is generally a portrait lens, it works so good for video because you get that really compressed look where the background seems closer to the foreground and the subject and all of that. It's a very compressed look. It looks super cinematic. Lenses like this are kind of one of the secret sauces to making your gear and your movies and your videos that little bit more cinematic because they just work so damn well. Photos, sharpness. This thing for a start is tack sharp, right? Video, photos, boom, tack sharp, in of. It is sharp right across the aperture range. Probably around F1.4, tiny little bits off, but you're really going to have to be pixel peeping with a magnifying glass to find out. any issues here. The one issue I did find, and it's not a huge thing, but it is noticeable depending on what you're shooting from time to time, chromatic aberration, so you'll get a little bit of a green fringe or like a purple fringe depending on what you're shooting. A lot of high contrast scenarios can produce that in a lot of lenses. Not a big deal. I personally, I didn't really think it was one of these things that was going to be an issue looking at the final result. So that's the only kind of nitpick that I would have. The rest of the specs on this, and now let's talk about how this compares to the Sony G Master lens. Sony's 85mm lens is an absolute beast. It's nearly 3 times the price of the Sirui. I have rented it countless times in the States on commercial shoots for work, and it works exceptionally well. However, it's really heavy. This thing is 540 grams. 540 grams, that's it, that's all. The Sony one is not 540 grams. This thing is 3 times cheaper. The quality out of it, is it worth 3 times the price to go and get the Sony one? Personally, right now, I would be saying no. The performance, the weight, everything. This is an exceptional lens. Genuinely, the build quality, everything is exceptional about this lens. And should you have like an 85mm lens in your bag? Well, here's my take on what lenses you should have in your bag, just really, really quickly, because you probably only need 2 lenses, and one is always going to be on the camera. Depending on what you're shooting, you're always going to need a wide lens, like a 16 to 35, or just a 16mm. I have a 16mm lens that I use all the time. In fact, this is a 16mm lens right now. And then either you need something like a 50 or an 85 or maybe a telephoto, and that's it. This, because of the size, is instantly going into the bag. Now, there's enough reach with this. And by the way, with a lot of the Sony cameras, you get that clear image zoom. That still works with this flawlessly well. And all the other kind of gadgets and gizmos that the Sony cameras offer, like Product Showcase, that also works flawlessly on this. And if there was ever going to be something else to trip up the autofocus, it would be that. Now, that's the downside as well of shooting an F1.4. You are literally focusing on a hair, and if you move a millimeter, you're out of focus. So you're not going to shoot everything at F1.4, but when you need to, it is here. And man, it is damn good. I did find kind of, while the lens is tack sharp across the entire aperture range, 5.6 thereabouts seems to be the absolute crispest you can get it, but chances are you'll probably have to pixel peep to see really much difference when it comes to the sharpness of this Sirui. There's an early bird price right now, and if you pick up the Sirui 85mm lens, it'll also give you a UV and a mist filter included. The whole image quality that you get out of this, the look, the tack sharpness out of it, and again for that price, this thing to me is an absolute no-brainer. Something else that might be a no-brainer is the video here that YouTube thinks you will absolutely love. So I'll see you on the next vid, and watch this one in the meantime.